How long do you think it took me to write this letter when I originally wrote it? It took me 1.5 years. It took me 18 months to write this letter. This was my first successful sales letter. And the thing is this letter is packed with psychology that is not apparent to the naked eye or the naked mind. And we got up to mailing 1 million letters a week in peak seasons, 1 million letters a week. Now, the responses differed a little bit, but we took in on many days, and that company still does 20,000 checks a day. 20,000 checks a day. It's hard for you to imagine what happens when one of these things explodes. And it really, really can happen. Dennis Hasslinger and I were taking in the equivalent of today's money, about $360,000 a day.
The strategy of this is that this is coming from a small town, and somebody is going to be making an offer, and the offer is to sell you information on your surname. Now, this has a broad appeal because everybody's got a surname, and what it was going to do was sell you a report, which was actually something you could hang. And here's an actual report from Halbert's Inc., and it's a report on the Halbert name. Now, this isn't the original version that we're going to be talking about in this letter, because the original actually also had a coat of arms. And they switched later, and I can't verify, but I'm suspicious that the real reason is when they had the coat of arms here, and they were later, the real goal of this was to actually a back-end piece, or which is to sell you a plaque with your coat of arms on it. Now, I'm sure there were a lot more people that were willing to just go ahead and take, frame the printed version of the coat of arms and leave it at that. And I don't know, and I'm just speculating that by holding it back, it made this more desirable as a back-end piece. But in any case, this is from the original Halbert's Incorporated company. This is one of the original products. It's all solid wood, and this is the Halbert coat of arms from Halbert's Inc. And later, they, of course, weren't going to spend that kind of money on, as wood and everything became more expensive, and they started putting more into the design and a little less into the materials, and here's a later version of it. Okay, now, knowing that this is going to come, but at first, they don't know about this plaque. They don't know anything about it, and it's not even going to be mentioned in the letter. The first thing that they're actually being told about is this copy of this report, which has information about their names, which we're going to go into. Okay, now, so the one last thing that I'm going to mention that we're going to touch base on right now, but we'll get into in much greater detail when we're in the copy, is the idea of personalization. At this time, its stage, personalization was coming out where the computer would personalize the message directly to whoever the recipient was. But it was so obvious and so crudely done because the technology hadn't advanced enough that everybody could spot it immediately and it would fail the sniff test. So if you had taken a regular computer-generated letter and wrote "Dear Mr. Halbert" on it, and you would see that it would say "Dear Mr." and Halbert would look completely off and askew and stuff like that, and you would know instantaneously that this wasn't a personal message. And our father had a brilliant way of getting around that, which we're going to explain as we get into the copy.
Okay, so we're going to start off breaking down this ad. And as we've heard in the video, this ad or one-page sales letter is packed full of psychology that isn't apparent to the naked eye or the naked mind. And it all starts off up here. Every single character that's written on this page is there for a reason, and this address block here is no less relevant. Now we want to start off with just this part of the address, and this is a short address. This is the type of this is not a big number like 12,000 or 120,000. This is a small short number. This is the number of numbers in this that would be sent from someone's house. And as we said, this is a personal communication that's not coming from a corporation, and we're doing this so this is in keeping with the theme of this personal communication. And we're also noticing here that this is coming from Ira Road. It's you know, Ira is probably someone's name. Maybe they settled the area first, and it's a road. It's not, you know, some big boulevard or something like that. Do you want to comment on that one?
Yeah, I'd like to add that, you know, road is spelled out, and the reason I think that is because nobody but you. It was personal. Only personal messages would spell out road, you know, because everybody in a company setting would, you know, abbreviate things and they would spell out RD. And by spelling out road, you know, I mean, in today, you would probably say, you know, only my grandmother would spell out road. But it actually really hammers home the point and is proof, actually, of how much they went into making sure that this street address looked like it could be a residential street. You know, because it's IRA, excuse me, which is to say that it's not Main Street. You know, it's not only just not a road, but it's also not Main Street. It's not 25th Street. It's IRA Road, so that you immediately do not get the impression that this is actually a company office. You get the impression that it's passing the sniff test, that this has actually come from a residential home. And, you know, go ahead, Kevin, let's talk about, you know, the small town nature of this.
Yeah, the Bath, Ohio part, this is a critical part. This is a big part of the story of the recipe that made this thing big. And what we have here is that with this is coming from Bath, Ohio. This isn't coming from Cincinnati. This isn't coming from Chicago, New York, Miami, or anything else. This is what's probably most valuable about this thing is they probably never heard of Bath, Ohio. That makes it really small town. You know, and in this case, the less they've heard of where this message is coming from, actually, it's the better. And part of that value in this being from Bath, Ohio, is this is in keeping with the theme that this is coming from it's a one-to-one communication. Someone typed them a letter, took the time to type them a letter, and mailed this to them. And normally, you know, if there's a non-commercial message, it's going to be sent from a non-commercial return address. And this was so important that when they moved operations out of Bath, Ohio into another place, the response went down. And so it was worth it to them financially for the amount of response change they got to take these letters that were sent from Bath, Ohio, and put them on a truck and drive them to the Bath, Ohio post office so that the Bath, Ohio post office would cancel this letter. And this was third-party federal official confirmation that this was coming from little small town Bath, Ohio. And they you know, response went back up, and they knew that it was worth loading in a truck, putting gas in it, and having someone drive it there to dump it off at that post office, because people were sniffing on this letter to see if it was from a real person, and that cancellation stamp proved that it was worth, that they were checking, and that it was worth doing for those people that did check. Okay, next up we have is the introduction, or the beginning of the letter, as most people would think of it, and it's right here. It just says, "Dear Mr. McDonald." Okay, "Dear Mr. McDonald" is exactly how, in keeping with the theme of this one-to-one communication of someone you don't know, this is how you would address them. "Dear Mr. McDonald." You wouldn't say "Dear Joe" if you didn't know Joe. If you figured out, why is he calling me Joe? This guy doesn't even know me. Or if you said "Dear Occupant" or "Dear Landowner" or whatever, it wouldn't jive. Okay. Now this lets them know that this isn't just a general letter, because it's saying they know their last name, that the person that wrote this knew who their last name was. But this is just at the emerging time in around 1970, when computers and reel-to-reel mag tapes that stored data were emerging, and people were beginning to try to personalize a letter, or I should say make a letter appear personal that wasn't, that was being sent out to many, many, many recipients. Problem is that the personalization section of the letter looked different from the rest of the letter, and people quickly realized that this letter was not being a personal communication, that a commercial message was being sent to them, and you know, that quickly just lost all credibility of the marketer in the reader's eyes. Okay, now this letter, and at this moment in time, with this these computers and these databases and everything is what I've been describing as the perfect storm, because we have something here that it has a unique moment of things coming together all at once at the right time. Now, our father, one of his most treasured mentors, a lot of people think it's other people like Robert Collier or Claude Hopkins or anything, but to be honest, his biggest mentor as far as his hero in marketing was a guy named Thomas Hall. And I believe Thomas Hall was the one that said the worst mistake you can do in direct response marketing is try to mail a promotion to the phone book. And the reason is that everybody in the phone book didn't have anything in common. Some of them didn't like golf. Some of them, might not like this car or this or that. And the point being is that if you send a letter out, there's so many people that wouldn't be interested in what you are offering that you were wasting all this money getting the message into people's hands of something they didn't want. In fact, there's an order of things of why people don't buy. The first reason is they don't know about it. The second reason is they don't want it. And so when you mail out something to the phone book, the people don't have anything as an indicator of anything they have in common. But the interesting breakthrough part here is that they do have one thing in common in the phone book, is that they all have a surname, a last name. And wow, this product happens to be about people's last names. Okay, so that was definitely the one thing they had in common. And now our father had access to all the people that had, all these people who had the same last name. Okay, and we had it in a digital format, so it was easy to pluck out and to mail to these people. Now, the thing was, what he did though, what was very clever, was he abandoned the idea